Hello everyone and welcome to the Keep Productive YouTube channel. Today's feature I'm going to be passing over to Justin DiRose. Me and him were on the Tools I Use podcast this week. He will be diving today into how he uses OmniFocus. Now he's going to be using OmniFocus 3 for Mac, so he'll be diving into the way that he uses tags, perspectives, and just in general how he uses a task management experience. So I'm going to be passing you guys into the capable hands of Justin. So guys, thanks very much. I will see you guys very, very soon. Thank you, Justin, and here we are.
Hello there, my name is Justin DiRose. I'm owner of the Productivity Guild, an online community for productivity enthusiasts who are looking to utilize their technology in better ways to get where they want to go in life. I'm also a podcaster. I have a podcast called Process, which is focused on the authentic realities of productivity. It's a short form podcast, and I hope you get a chance to check it out. But today, I'm here to do a quick walkthrough on my OmniFocus setup. Now, I have chosen to use OmniFocus as my task manager after using a wide variety of other tools. I've used Things, I've used Todoist, I've dabbled with tools like Asana in the past. And the reason that I land on OmniFocus is it just jives with the way I think, the way that it structures projects and tags and perspectives, and the way that it works across all my iOS devices and my Mac, and then it also has some very strong automation features. So today, I want to dive into the basics of my setup so you can get a feel for how I utilize this tool. Before we dive into that, I'd love to spend a little bit of time giving you some insight into my thought process behind using this tool. Now, some people like to live out of their task manager every single day. I like to think of OmniFocus as my second brain. The reason for that is I've found that staying in the tool overcomplicates things for me. So instead of running off of a list in here every single day, trying to weed out whatever items that are in there and make decisions on the fly of what tasks I'm going to do now and then what tasks I'm going to do after I get done with that one. What I'm doing is setting a goal to go into the task manager, review the perspectives that I have set, select what I'm going to do for the day, write it down either in a text document on my computer or more likely on paper, and then start cranking on it. Then if I run out of things to do and I check off all those items on my list, then I can go back into the task manager and see where I'm at and pick some more things to do. So for those of you who aren't familiar with OmniFocus, there's some basic structure here. We've got the inbox, which is where all the items that generally don't have a project or a tag associated to them land. Then you've got your projects perspective, which shows you all your folders and projects. We'll get into that in a moment. Tags, which is, if you're familiar with tags from Todoist, they're basically the same concept. There's some neat features in there that I'm not using at this time, but have used in the past, and we can take a look at those. And then these other perspectives that are custom that show you they're basically custom searches of your task database that shows you what you want in the way that you want it. So to start off today, we're going to start with the projects perspective. So this is basically what my database looks like right now. I've got a number of folders over here, and these folders correlate with things that I want to focus on in different areas. So these are habits that I'm working on, usually just checklisted habits, and I'll show you those in just a second. Procourse, which is the business that I work for, doing development on the Discourse platform. Discourse is an online community platform, and it's actually what the Productivity Guild runs on. Guild, which is the Productivity Guild. Business is anything general to my business or freelancing or anything like that. Personal is anything in my personal life. Routines, these are tasks that are routine and occur on a regular basis from any of these areas. I've just segmented them out away from my regular work that I do and project-based work. And then upcoming. Upcoming is my someday maybe list. Let's start at the top here. So in habits, I really only have 2 projects at this point in time. A startup routine and a shutdown routine. So this startup routine is basically how I start every single one of my work days. So I start off by reviewing Streaks, my habit tracking app, and I have a morning routine that I go through in there. And so I make sure that I complete it. And then I run my morning check-in. Now, this morning check-in is a Siri shortcut that I've created on my iPhone that basically just asks me a few questions and things like, hey, how are you doing right now? Do you need a break? Do you need to take a nap? Do you need to do stuff like that? Are there particular people that are important to you in your life that you need to connect with? It's just a way for me to stay connected with what's going on inside of me, because I know that when I don't do that, then everything else basically starts to fall apart. And so this just helps me kind of stay on the path that I want. Then from there, I'll create my day plan, which is running through these perspectives over here, reviewing some sites that I need to for the pro coursework that I do. Then I do a daily review, which is basically processing a bunch of inboxes, like my mail, drafts, Bear, my paper. I usually carry a couple notebooks with me, and then OmniFocus. And then lastly, we do a daily check-in for the work that I do. Shutdown is very similar, except it's just, from the end of the day instead of the beginning. I'll do a mind sweep, which is basically putting everything that's on my mind at that moment in time into the OmniFocus inbox. Then I run that check-in shortcut again. I use Toggle for time tracking, so I'll make sure that I get those tagged and categorized correctly so that I'm able to run reports on them. Process my inboxes, and then I will reset my workspace. So that's my computer. So I make sure I close out anything that's open and running and reset things there and capture any tasks that's there. And then on my desk, I make sure that I clean all it up. If anyone who knows me knows that sometimes I accumulate, pop cans. I don't drink pop, but, like Perrier cans or coffee cups and stuff on my desk. So I just make sure that those get to where they need to go. Something interesting about the actual areas of responsibility here is these baseline projects. So in OmniFocus, there's a couple of different types of projects that you can create. There's a single action list, which is these baselines. There are parallel projects, and there are sequential projects. Parallel projects say every single task in that project is available at the same time. Sequential projects, but it has a definitive endpoint. Sequential projects start with the first task at the top available, and then as you complete that task, the next task on the list becomes available. But single action projects, they're meant to stay in your list. So they're just basically a catch-all. And so I've got a baseline project in every one of these areas. Now I have to give credit to Beck Tench from the OmniFocus forums, and she's also part of the Productivity Guild for this idea. But it's basically a catch-all place for ideas and tasks that I need to do that I don't necessarily want to turn into a project. One of the struggles that I've had with the task manager is overcomplicating things. And so when I try to blow everything up into as much detail as possible, I find that I get overwhelmed by trying to manage that long term. I can usually handle it for a couple of weeks, but then I just start reverting to the way I was doing things before, which is trying to keep things a little bit more high level and give myself a sense of direction in the tool instead of trying to plan out every single little detail in it. So I've just decided to embrace that thought process and use this approach to create a baseline in every single one of these areas of responsibility. And so in those, you'll find tasks that aren't associated with a project. Now, with all this, it's important to note what is actually in my task list right now. I tend to keep only stuff that I am actively working on in my task list. So in here, for example, we'll take the guild folder, for example. I've got this Keep Productive video that I'm working on, which I'm recording right now. I've got the next episode of Process, which I'm going to record. I've got some baseline project, tasks in the guild that I'm going to work on. But all of these are tasks and projects that I'm planning to work on and keep moving forward within the next week. The reason I do this is because, again, I've struggled with overwhelm in my task manager. And so to combat that, I'm setting this limit on myself. From there, anything that I'm not going to do this week goes into my upcoming folder. So in here, I've got some single action projects that are for each of these areas of responsibility, but they're set, you see this pause icon on here, they're set to on hold. And so as I populate these, they're not going to clutter up these other perspective views over here because they're going to be on hold. Now this upcoming folder is only for tasks and projects that I am committed to doing in the near future. So probably within the next month or so. Everything else goes into an ideas folder or ideas tag rather, inside of Bear, where I can at least keep a running idea of those items. But I was finding over time that when I was throwing all of my someday maybe items in OmniFocus, I wasn't actually doing them. I would have my regular routine work that I was doing that would keep me really busy throughout the week. But then I would review those lists and I honestly wouldn't ever come back to any of those tasks. And so I've just decided I'm going to put them in a different tool. I'll review it regularly and I'll be intentional to move anything that I intend to do and decide to do from that list back into OmniFocus. So we'll hit the routines folder next here. There's a number of areas that I have in here. So there's a business one, personal, seasonal, and technology. Again, these are single action projects, but these are all the tasks that are in here. We'll go to the seasonal, why not? All of these in here are recurring tasks. OmniFocus has some very powerful recurring task features, which is one of the reasons that I really like it. Combine that with defer dates, which basically say this task isn't going to be available until next year on the 25th of January. I think that being able to have these kind of routines is probably the easiest for me anyway to have inside of OmniFocus. So these will come available in a certain time period, and then I'll check it off. And then as you can see, we'll check this replace furnace filter one. On the right-hand bar, there's this repeat section over here. It's checked to repeat every 1 year from this item's completion. And so I don't necessarily need to replace my furnace filter on the 25th of January every single year, but it'll become available because I replaced my filter on the 25th of January this year. It'll become available a year from now to remind me to replace it. And then when I check that off, whether I check it off on the 25th of January or 2 weeks after that, it'll remind me to replace it a year from then. Really powerful. But the whole idea of OmniFocus is and the reason that I really find it helpful and beneficial is that you can make things available and make things kind of hide behind the scenes when they need to. Other task managers like Todoist, I was personally struggling with that. And I know it works for other people, which is totally fine. But for me personally, I was struggling with the fact that I could not hide a task. Once I put it in there, it was basically in there until I checked it off. And so for me, dealing with overwhelm, having this ability to defer something or put a project on hold is very, very valuable. That's, in a summary, my project structure for OmniFocus. Let's hop over to tags. So my tag situation in OmniFocus is very limited and curated at this moment in time. I actually just went in and completely redid this because I found that it was getting a little unwieldy. So let me show you what these are. I've got these channels tags, and I'll talk about this in just a minute. Communicate, these are tasks that are anything that I need to communicate with somebody, whether that's in person, via text message, or phone call. Consider tasks are items that are things I need to think about or things that I want to evaluate or read. Create is anything that I'm creating. There's a number of tags, a number of tasks and projects that I'm doing, especially for the Productivity Guild, where I'm creating content. So I want to have all of that in one place. Habit, again, it's simple. It's just a habit. Important is a tag that I'm testing out, which is just showing me these are tasks that I need to be aware of that are important. Play, pretty much self-explanatory there. These are things that I want to do that are just playing. I'm playing with something. One of the things that I'm trying to prioritize in my life is to have more leisure time. And so having a tag of tasks inside of OmniFocus and a perspective of tasks where I can go and say, okay, it's time to play. What am I going to do? I can go and hit that perspective, or I can hit that tag, and I can see that list of items there. Quick, these are items that are going to take me less than an hour generally. They're not a project that I need to focus on for a longer period of time. And so it's just a quick hits list where I can start burning through those if I've got some free time. And then routine, pretty straightforward, and upcoming. Those both match the folder structures. It's just a tag to make sure that those items have metadata on them showing exactly what they are. Let's go back to this channels tag. So you can see I've got sub tags on here of 1, 2, and 3. So this whole channels idea comes from Kourosh Dini. Kourosh Dini has a book called Creating Flow with OmniFocus 3. And it's a fantastic resource for anybody who wants to really dive in and learn how to use their OmniFocus tool better. One of the ideas that he discusses as part of that book is channels of work. So the whole idea of having a channel of work is that you have basically a limited number of slots of work and things that you need to do. And so, and because you can only focus on a small number of things at any one time, and it's difficult to have more than just a few projects, big projects that you're actually making progress on, at any one time. And so the point of having channels of work is to create some artificial limits on yourself as to what you're actively pursuing at any one given point in time. Kourosh has a specific project inside of his OmniFocus. If on Learn OmniFocus, I know that he has a workflow. Learn OmniFocus is a resource that Tim Stringer has put together for OmniFocus users. But he's done a couple of different workflows, which are available for free, that he goes through this process of his channels of work project. But what I've decided to do is implement it via tags, because that's one of the beauties of OmniFocus 3 is that we now have tags. Tasks are not limited to having just one tag. Before, they could only have one context. And so the way I'm doing this now is that if I click on this, then you see channel 1, 2, and 3, the different projects that I have that I am focusing on. So this Keep Productive video, something that my wife and I are needing to decide on in regards to our business. And then this last one is my next episode of Process. And then once I complete those and clear that channel of work out, that gives an opportunity for another big project to move up into that area. It's just a helpful way to think about my work so that I have a sense of these are the most important things that I need to do. And then these other things like consider and communicate and these quick tasks, they're not quite as important, even though they still need to get done. So the last thing I want to share with you today in my system is some of these custom perspectives. In a way, these custom perspectives are just the ability for me to have a quick way to look at my system. So we've already gone through the channels of work and the project structure, and a lot of these, and the tags, actually, and a lot of these perspectives map directly to that. It just makes it easy to see just what I want at the right time. So if I click on this habits perspective, all this is doing is showing me the habits folder with the available projects. The radar perspective, this one's a little more interesting. These are things that are due, flagged, or are in the channels of work. So this is my perspective of these are the number one things that I need to keep on my radar that I need to make progress on. And as if you can see over here in the perspectives view, it's a fairly simple perspective, but it's any tasks that are available and that any of the following are true, that they're due, flagged, or they have one of those channels tags associated with them. And one of the things that I like to do to jump between perspectives in OmniFocus is use Keyboard Maestro. And so I have a keyboard shortcut set up that brings up a little perspective switcher palette, just like this. And so to go to the routine task perspective, all I have to do is hit the number 3. It's pretty cool. So again, this just maps all of the tasks that are tagged with routine that are in my routine folder that are available. And so it'll just give me the ability to see at first glance what routine items need to be taken care of, and so on and so forth. Same thing with the Pro Course perspective. And the Consider perspective, it just shows the Consider tag. Communication, same thing here. The Communicate tag is highlighted here. Quick. And then Available, these are literally just all of the projects and tasks that are set to available. My plan long term with this is if I end up needing to stop working on a project, but I've made progress on it and it's something I need to continue working on, I will end up needing to either defer the project to the future so that's unavailable, or I'll just put it on hold. So each project has, in addition to type, which we talked about earlier, has a status. So you can set that to active, which is what it's at now, on hold, which is pause, so then all the items in there show up as unavailable. Completed, which is completed, and dropped, which is basically, nope, we're not moving forward on that anymore. I'll set that back to active. But anyway, what this perspective allows me to do is just get a high-level view of all of my available projects and tasks once I get through the rest of these if I need to look at something else. And then lastly, upcoming goes to my upcoming lists. That really covers it for my OmniFocus setup. OmniFocus is a very powerful tool. And I know that the price can be a little intimidating when you start looking at the Mac version plus the iOS version. It can get up over $100 for both pieces of software. But if you're somebody who needs to have some level of, a granular level of control over your tasks, and other tools haven't cut it out for you, I would highly recommend giving it a go. It is a very powerful tool. It offers a lot of flexibility. My favorite feature of OmniFocus is literally the ability to show what I want when I want to see it, and nothing more. And that makes it insanely valuable for me, and has, I've owned OmniFocus for a few years, and OmniFocus 3 just came out this last year. And so I had to invest in it again, but I happily paid the money for it because it has been such a valuable tool for me over the last probably 5 years that I've been using it. So for those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more about OmniFocus and getting more in depth with how to use the tool, I have a few resources that will be very beneficial for you. First is Learn OmniFocus. Learn OmniFocus is a site put together by Tim Stringer that is a membership site, but has a large number of videos and webinars from a long period of time, since 2014, discussing specifically OmniFocus. He regularly has people on to do workflow videos similar to what I'm sharing with you today. And I highly recommend his resources when it comes to OmniFocus. The beauty of task managers and productivity systems is that everybody approaches them a little bit differently, and especially with task managers, there's very much a blank slate type feel to a lot of them. And so, you'll see a number of resources here today that I am sharing with you, but every single one of them, even though they're covering the same tool, every single one of them has a different approach, and you learn new things from these people. So Learn OmniFocus is one of those resources that I highly recommend. Additionally, David Sparks, or Mac Sparky as everybody knows him, has a field guide on OmniFocus. David has probably the highest quality production value of anybody that's out there, and he painstakingly goes through these field guides to make sure that they're as high value in the content as possible. The course is only $29, as you can see on the screen here. And so I think that this is a no-brainer for somebody who is especially first just getting into OmniFocus to learn how the tool works and some ways that you can effectively use it, including things like series shortcuts and how automation works with the software as well. I mentioned Karash Dini. And he has a site over at usingomnifocus.com, but he specifically has a book called Creating Flow with OmniFocus. Just came out this last year, and like I mentioned earlier, it's a fantastic resource for especially diving into very deep into how to work through using OmniFocus to create a peaceful sense of calm in getting your work done. Another book here is Build Your OmniFocus Workflow. Rosemary Orchard and Ryan Dotson collaborated on this one. I've read through it myself, and it's a great resource, especially for people who are just getting into OmniFocus and trying to figure out how this tool works. Highly recommend this one as well. And then lastly, the Productivity Guild Pro membership. Now, we do have a number of screencasts that we're putting out weekly on the Productivity Guild, but we also have the Working with OmniFocus course. So if you're interested in coming over to the Productivity Guild and checking that out, I'd be glad to have you.